And hello again, and welcome to part 4 of my Kawasaki Z650/1170 Reboot series. So we'll start off by fitting a set of air filters to the carbs, because right now it doesn't have any. So when it comes to air filters, I do have a bit of a choice. I could just fit some velocity stacks, which look really cool, but don't do any filtration at all, and therefore I won't be using them. Next up, I've got these things. These are Ram Air, so-called Ram Air, sort of spongy air filters, as you can see. Easy to fit, and I do believe they do work quite well, but perhaps not quite as well as K&N's. So for that, I've got here a set of, I think actually the K&N's, but they're actually marketed by APE in America. Some nice chrome bits on it. I've had these for quite a while, and these will fit straight on my Mikuni RS34 carbs. So I think I'll go for these. As I say, I think they are made by K&N. It's just that they're sold underneath the APE brand name. So let's get these on the bike and see how they look. And so I fitted the APE air filters to the carbs, and I must say it all looks pretty good. But then I hit a problem, and that problem is that this Z1 side panel will no longer fit on the frame because it now hits the air filter. Now the reason for that is because this frame is obviously a Z650 frame, and overall it's a bit shorter than an original Z1, Z900 or Z1000 frame, and you can see that because I've got a little gap here, and that gap doesn't exist for an original Z1, Z1000 or Z900, and that's why these side panels hit the air filter. So sadly I can't use these APE air filters. And so I fitted the Ram Air filters, which are nice and soft, as you can see, and these don't prevent me from fitting the Z1 side panel. And because they're so soft, I don't have to worry about them damaging the paintwork, as you can see. And so with that done, let's move on to something else. And so with the air filters on the carbs, it's now time to go back to a problem I described at the end of part 3. And that problem concerns the seat, or rather the way the seat is bolted to the bike. So if I take it off here, this seat by the way is a complete one-off seat with a fiberglass base. Into the base we've got 4 studs coming out of it. The 2 studs at the front aren't a problem. They go into holes on a cross piece on the frame, and I can access the underside of that area of the frame once I've taken off the side panels, so I can get a nut on there, no problem. The real problem though is at the back. I've got these 2 studs here, and they don't go anywhere. I explained why that's a problem and why it happened, but that's old news now. So what I've got to do is come up with a way of securing the back of the seat using these 2 studs when there's nothing for these studs to go into at all. And even if I could make some kind of bracket that comes off this cross piece here, I couldn't access it. I couldn't screw on a nut because of course when the seat's in place you have no access. So how on earth can I secure the back of the seat without having any access? So I came up with an idea, but that idea had to wait until this week because I was waiting for some parts to arrive from eBay. So let me put the seat back on and I'll show you what that is. So down here I've got the piece I was waiting for, and this is a piece of aluminium sheet. It's quite a thick piece, 8mm thick. So let me take this in the garage with the seat and I'll try and explain what I've got in mind. And so let's start off with a simple diagram. So here's a quick picture of my seat on its side, and here's the 2 studs at the front, and here's the 2 studs at the back. So what I'm going to do with this aluminium plate is make it into a kind of tongue, which will be bolted to these 2 studs at the back and then go backwards, but it will be bent. So it's going to be bent like a sort of S shape, something like this. Now bending 8mm aluminium isn't easy. I can't do it, but I know a man with a big hydraulic press who should be able to handle that no problem. And if I get the bends right and everything's lined up as it should do, then this is what should happen. And so what I want to do is to cut down this aluminium plate until it looks something like this cardboard template. So there'll be 2 holes in the front here which will bolt to the 2 mounts on the seat, and then the back part, this tongue part, will be bent, as I say, in a sort of S shape, so it'll just slide underneath here, and it's going to be the correct width so there's no movement between the plate and these two bolts which secure this plate here, and I think that should keep things pretty secure. The seat can't go up and down, and it now can't go side to side, and I think that should be enough, because obviously I've also got the two mounts at the front which bolt to the frame, so I think that might work. The only difficulty is going to be to work out how much I've got to bend this by, because I can't see what's going on when the seat's in place. I'll have to sort of try and do some very careful measuring and, I don't know, make something out of some very thin material just to try and gauge it and keep changing it until it's just right. So yeah, that's the plan, and hopefully it'll work out okay. And so let's make a start. Phew, that was hard work. And now this plate is almost the correct width to fit on the bike, but I've got to take off a bit more, so I think this should speed things up a bit. And now this plate is a nice sliding fit in between these two bolts, as you can see. So now I've got to drill this end so it can mount to the other side of the seat. And it does, as you can see, but that's the easy bit. The next step is a lot more difficult, and that's to work out how much this needs to be bent down to fit underneath the cross piece on the bike just perfectly. And yeah, that's not so easy. And now, after quite a few goes, I think I've got the correct template for bending that 8mm aluminium plate for the rear seat mount. And what I've been doing is using this stuff. These are just offcuts of 3mm aluminium plate, which are much easier to bend. I've been trying out different lengths, different heights and so on to see which one works just right. This one doesn't work quite right, so that can go over there, but the one on the seat now is just right, I think. So this one here, I'll take over to Jeff DeWell's place in the morning, along with my 8mm plate, having bend it to follow the profile of this template here. And hopefully when I bring it back, get it mounted on the seat, it should work really well. Slide underneath this plate here and secure the rear of the seat just right. Well, that's the theory anyway. So we'll carry on in the morning, and hopefully I can get that plate on the seat and fitted to the bike. And now, as you can see, I finished making this rear seat mount, and it works really well. It's a really tight, snug fit in between these two posts at the back of the bike, and it keeps the rear of the seat nice and secure on the bike. That said, I did end up making it from 4mm aluminium plate rather than 8mm, because 8mm was getting a bit too OTT. It didn't need to be 8mm, so I found some 4mm and made it out of that, and as I say, it works really well. So with that done, let's see what else we can do today. And next, a really simple job. I want to swap out this stainless steel cap head here for a nice titanium bolt, which more closely matches the titanium bolts nearby. That's better, and no doubt about 2 grams saved. And next, because I'm not using a standard airbox and instead I'm using pod filters, I've got to have one of these things. And this is a K&N crankcase breather filter. Looks like that. And it's got to go on top of the crankcases, right there, where normally there'll be a tube going from the crankcase breather up to the airbox. And so here it's fitted. I'm not sure if you can see it too well because it's hidden away beneath the AirPods, but there it is. And now it's time for me to fit a part I fit to all my one-off bikes, and that part is this, a Pingel fuel tap. A very expensive Pingel fuel tap, but in my opinion, well worth the money, because they're so well made and so well engineered. You know, it's well worth getting one of these things for your custom bike. Only slight downside to fitting a Pingel is they tend not to be vacuum operated, and that means that every time you stop your bike, you've got to remember to turn off the fuel, and every time you get on your bike to start it, you've got to remember to turn them back on again. So that's something you need to build up a habit for. It's pretty easy to do because you soon get used to it, and yeah, they're so well made, they feel so good, you really don't want to go back to using a standard fuel tap once you've used a Pingel. Only slight problem with my particular bike is that you won't see it because it's going to be hidden partly by the front of the side panel on this side, but whatever. So let's get this fitted and then we can move on and see what else we can do today. And so with the Pingel fuel tap fitted right down there, which you can't see, it's now time to move on to a problem I've got with the forks, because one of the fork legs is leaking. So I've bought myself a pair of new seals, and I've now got to remove the front end and change those fork seals. Now I won't film all that because there's loads of good videos on YouTube already on how to do that particular job. But what I have done is I've got a part that's been modified to help me with that task. So let me get that part out and I'll explain what I've had done. And so the problem I've got is that I can't lift up the bike safely to remove the front forks. And that's because the bike doesn't have a centre stand, and the way the exhaust system runs underneath the engine means that my bike lift here, this part will hit the exhaust pipes before these parts will meet the frame rails, which isn't a good idea. Now, what I could do, what I have done in the past, is just get some big thick blocks of wood on here instead, and that kind of works, but it's not particularly ideal, and it can lead the bike a bit unstable, which we don't want. So as it turns out, I've got two of these bike lifts, so therefore I've had these sliding pieces modified, as you can see, if you compare the two, to lift up this part by about 50 millimeters. So if I now slide that on there, like so, you see a difference, quite a difference. So now with my new parts here, these sliding parts, when I put the lift underneath the bike, it means these parts will clear the exhaust pipe and they hit the frame rails before the rest of it hits the underside of the exhaust. So now I can lift up the bike safely and remove the forks. So yeah, this was a bit of a weird one to do, but yeah, it didn't cost too much money. Jeff the Welder did it for me in about half an hour, so well worth getting done. And in fact, I've got the same issue with my Kawasaki Z650B project, because it's also now got leaking forks, and it's also got a Delcavit exhaust system that looks like that. So these will come in very handy in the future, I think. Right, so that's a small mod. I've done a sort of resto mod to my bike lift. And so once the front forks have been rebuilt, that just leaves me with two jobs to do before this build is complete. The first job is to get the cockpit fairing painted. I've already spoken to my local painter, Mark, and I'll take it over to see him in the next few days, and he'll paint it whenever he can. As usual, it's really busy, so it could be Christmas by the time I get the fairing back, but that's the way things are. When you've got a good local painter who's not too expensive, he's always very, very busy. So my last job to do before this bike is complete is to sort out the oil leak, which is associated with this outrigger system I've got on the bike. And that outrigger system, of course, supports the gearbox sprocket on the bike, and I just can't get the damn thing to keep the oil in the engine. So I was going to make a new gasket for that particular part. It's non-standard, by the way, and someone asked me, why don't you use a standard part, a standard gasket? Well, I can't, because all standard fixtures on the crankcase are 6mm, but on my bike some of those holes have been taken out to 8mm, M8. So yeah, standard gasket wouldn't work, but I have come up with a different idea of achieving what I want to achieve, so I'll cover that in the next video. So once that's done, hopefully, fingers crossed, the bike will start without any problems and the build is pretty much complete. And in fact, I won't post the next video about this bike until this engine is running and everything is finished. So whether that's going to be next week or the week after or next month or next year, who knows, but next time we see this bike, it will be running. So yeah, my next big task is to sort out this damn outrigger system. I've even considered actually not fitting it and just going with a standard system, a standard cover, but the problem with that is I want to use a hydraulic clutch. I've got all the parts for that. I've got the hydraulic, my cylinder here, I've got the slave, it's all set up for a hydraulic system, so I don't want to lose that, and it would be very expensive to make the changes now, so that's why I want to persevere with this damn outrigger system and hopefully get it working in the next video. So that's it for now. Not quite as long a video as I'd hoped, but I've been ill for the last 2 weeks, so I couldn't really work on the bike for most of the last 2 weeks, but I'm all right now, so hopefully we can make some more progress in the next few weeks. So that's it for now then. So thanks for watching and cheers.